Hey guys, welcome back to Community Starcraft 2. I'm your host Magnet, and you can see today that we'll be learning about some ZvT unit compositions and micro. What we mean by that is we'll be taking a look at some common unit compositions in this matchup, and I'll show you guys how to handle them against the various things you're going to see in this matchup. We've already covered stuff like macro, openers, all that good stuff. At this point we're assuming that, okay, well we're able to spend our money, we're able to make larvae, stuff like that. Now what units am I going to make? So we're going to go into the unit test map, which we can see right here, and we're going to make equally sized armies on both sides, or at least to the best of our ability. It's not too terribly scientific, just kind of getting a good idea. And of course, the first one we're going to take a look at, as you guys saw on the list, was the Muta Baneling and Zergling build, or at least the unit composition. And what we're going to get here is just a couple of upgrades. We're going to get Baneling speed, we're going to get 1-1 as you saw in there earlier. And mostly this is going to be all about the kind of connections your Banelings can get. And the first composition we're going to go against on the Terran side is just going to be bio mines. So that's effectively Marine Marauder, Medevac, and mines that are burrowed. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure that the Terran upgrades are also pretty reasonable as well. We're going to assume the Terran's at 2-2 while the Zerg is at 1-1, which happens all the time in this matchup. We also need to make sure that we have enough Medevacs to heal all of our stuff, as well as Marines and Marauders in decent amounts, usually more Marines than Marauders. And we're going to also research these upgrades, which make a lot of sense. And yeah, so we're going to kind of make a mid-sized army here. This is just kind of assuming it's more towards the middle of the game rather than super late game, considering this is kind of a mid-game composition. And I'm going to make sure that I get the mines out here as well. And part of what you're going to see me doing here is making sure units look okay as far as each side. One big thing you want to get in this composition especially is the Overseer, so that you can detect mines and be able to kill them off. And that'll be basically anytime you're facing mines. You will want to grab an Overseer, but I'm just showing that for the sake of it for the time being. So I'm going to burrow some mines. I'm going to spread the bio out just a little bit, and I'm going to make sure that I stim the Terran army before this fight starts, so it's about as equal as possible. Something you would see in your own games. And the whole idea with this is they want to kind of force you over the mines before they fight, so the mines can do their damage. Now, as far as engaging this, we actually need to make sure that we engage on creep as much as possible. So I'm going to start spreading my creep with these queens here. And if this one stopped derping and get over there and actually spread like I told her to. Okay, now we can see that we are at a point where the creep is spread. I'm going to start spreading my units out here and show you guys the first engagement. From this point forward, the video is going to go pretty fast. So if you need to come back and watch anything, then you're more than welcome to review it and make sure you know what's going on. I'm just spreading out the units here as ideally as possible. It's kind of a pre-split. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stim the army, and I'm going to select the Zerg army, and I'm going to send them forward. I'm going to show you guys what you really need to do against this kind of composition. Kind of a little too big of an army here, though. But okay, so here we go. We're going to basically attack right in. Going to make sure the army is stimmed. Head in here with your army, and what you want to do is you want to split against these mines the best you can. So you'll notice I was grabbing random units every once in a while, trying to split away from where the mines were. After that, you need to make sure your Banelings filter through the best as possible to hit Marines, and then from there, your Mutas should be able to clean up the rest. Next, we're going to talk about using this army composition against mech. Banelings are terrible against mech, so never use Banelings. You just want a lot of Mutas. Some Zerglings is what you're going to have here and there, but they're not really going to do too much. This is all about how many Mutas you can get on the field and how well you're able to stop this. More importantly, you want to make sure you fly over the army and then hold position or stop command right above the Thors. If you're all clumped up against the Thors, you're going to lose a lot of Mutas. You can see I'm still losing quite a bit here, and believe me, it'd be 10 times worse if I was all clumped up against those Thors. So you want to fly them all in, spread out, make sure you hold position, or use some stop micro. Lastly, we're going to take a look at the composition from Terran that's getting a little more popular nowadays, which is the Thor Hellbat along with Bio composition. And for this one, we're going to use a lot less Mutas and a lot more Banelings. And what you want to do with this is make sure, obviously, you grab everything. We're going to stim the army, obviously, so go ahead and stim. We're going to grab this in. What you want to do is just send everything as forward as possible. So you're going to go right past the Hellbats, get in a position where you're about in the middle of his army, and then make sure you detonate all your Zerglings as efficiently as possible on most of his, or rather detonate your Banelings on as much of his army as you possibly can. So that should at least kind of show you a little bit about the Lingbane Muta composition. And again, you can go back and rewatch this anytime if these are going a little bit too fast. Next, we're going to take a look at the Roach Hydra composition. Sometimes you do need to splash Banelings in there, and that's why I have it as part of the composition, but for the most part, it kind of revolves around Roach Hydra. So we're gonna basically set up against the exact same unit compositions we saw before, which is Bio Mine is the first one, the second one's Mech, and the third one is the Thor Hellbat plus Bio composition against or from Terran. So I'm just making sure the armies are decently sized here. This one's pretty straightforward. You basically just need to spread out and go against the mines, and especially control your banelings. The rest of the army you don't really need to do too much with. So what you're going to see me during this fight is I'll send everything in, but I'm going to make sure to select my banelings and control them independently. So I'm going to grab banelings, make sure you just kind of move command them forward. Don't have them attack, and just have them splash on as many marines as possible. And you'll notice my composition is very light on the roaches. You want more hydras than roaches, and you want this battle to end as soon as possible. The longer it drags on, the more it's going to favor the Terran. So we're going to go ahead and kill that army, as we can see. Next, we're going to talk about engaging mech. For this one, you want less hydras and more roaches. But you'll notice I have overlords overhead, and the overlords have drops and speed up researched. So I'm going to load most of my army into the overlords, which we can see here. And I'm going to start spreading out quite a bit. I'm going to spread them out so there's only a few units on the ground that are next to each other. They're going to be basically to attract fire in different directions. And I'm going to select my whole army here. I'm going to send it over the Terran army. And with the overlords, I'm going to drop the units out of the overlords as they're traveling. But you can use the drop button, click on the overlord. They'll drop out right where the overlord is, even if they're still moving. And if you can drop right on top of the tanks, you can see you'll crush armies pretty effectively. And lastly, of course, is the Thor Hellbat along with Bio composition. And this one you can see I'm back down to very little roaches, but I do have a lot more banelings. And the banelings, notice, are on the outside of my army. And that's to make them hopefully circumvent the Hellbats that should be in the front for them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send everything forward and kind of use the banelings to try and cut through the middle of his army to kill as many marines as possible. So typically the marines are going to be in the middle, the Thors are going to be in the back, and the Hellbats are going to be in the front. So if I send this forward, I'm going to select all my banelings out of there, and the Hellbats will hopefully be in a position that they can't really deal with it too well. And again, make sure to move and command your banelings as much as possible. After that, it should be about half of his army versus your hydras, and of course you want these battles to end as soon as possible, and if you can, then you should clean up pretty easily. So the final composition we're going to take a look at is the Ultra Queen Infestor composition. This is a very late game composition. Oftentimes this can be the composition that comes after the Lingbane Muta that happens in most games. So we're going to show you guys a couple of things you need to make sure you research here. I'm going to assume that everybody is fully upgraded, so Ultralists have armor, everyone's at 3-3. Your composition here, or at least against the first set of units, which is going to be Bio. We're going to go ahead and dump out some Bio Mine here like we were seeing before. And yeah, get them on the field. Now this is a weird composition because it's a lot based around spell casting and a lot of it's based around information. So as the Bio rallies up here, as we get this all set up, I'm going to kind of explain the idea behind both of these. You'll notice that I have a lot more Marauders in this composition for the Terran because they're typically going to want to make units that are good against the Ultras. The Marines are basically inevitable, and they will have a lot more mines as well. So I'm going to show you guys how to deal with this special circumstance. And before I forget, of course, I do need to make medevacs, so let's get these up here. But so the first stage of this is basically you're going to engage in with your Infestors. You're going to try to distract him a little bit and put a little bit of damage on him before you actually engage, because usually if you just bull in there, the mines will do way too much damage to your Ultras, and that won't be good. So what we want to do is I'm going to push my Infestors forward here, and I'm going to drop some infested Terrans as I walk up. That's to hopefully bait out some mine shots, so we can see that. Then I'm going to try and land some fungals. I'm going to stim the Terran army. And then once you've landed a couple of fungals and wasted some mine shots, we're going to run in there, then select all your queens and make sure to transfuse your Ultralisks as much as you possibly can. So you can see I'm trying not to let any Ultras die, and if you can do it right, and if you have enough queen energy, then you should actually keep every single one alive. Next, we're going to talk about engaging mech. And mech, actually this time you always want to make sure that the mech wastes as many shots as possible. You'll notice we have no queens in this composition because queens are basically useless against mech. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send my Ultralisks in, I have a ton of them, and I'm going to throw out infested Terrans here to try to attract the tank shots. This is going to be a longer fight, so the longer you can drag this out and make them waste shots on your infested Terrans, the better your Ultras are going to do because they're not taking as much damage. You can see, if you do it right, you should be able to crash through there. Finally, for the last battle of this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Hellbat Thor composition along with Bio. You'll notice that we have some Zerglings peppered in there as well, not nearly as many infestors. And we also want to make sure we have neuroparasite research, because when we crash in there, again, Zerglings kind of on the outside, we're going to try and neuroparasite the Thors, select your queens, and try to transfuse your ultras the best you can. But you really need the Thor DPS on your side against this composition if it starts to go late and they have tons upon tons of Thors. So again, this is kind of a later game composition, and we'll expect to actually have a lot more gas and research available. So if they're on this composition getting a ton of Thors out, especially with Marauder and stuff support, make sure to get Neuroparasite. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Again, I'm sorry, these videos tend to go by really fast. There's a lot of information to absorb. So you can always go back and watch the parts that you might want to see again. If you have any questions, you can always post down in the comments. I'll try to get to them the best I can as well. In the meantime, check out our sponsor, which is sc2replaystats.com. They have a lot of really cool replay analysis tools that will help you kind of understand what's going on in your own games a little better. But in the meantime, I guess take it easy, and I'll see you guys later.